Okay. So, hello, Audrey.
Hi.
It's really nice to be here with you today. I'm so glad that you responded to my call.
Yes, thank you. I feel the same way.
Yeah. I am obsessed by horses, as you know, and working with horses. And I was just so intrigued and inspired by your work. That I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I think it's very important work that the world needs to know about.
Yeah.
And I've had some experience with horses and equine therapy. The
Mm-hmm.
thing that I've loved and been so inspired by has been just the way that horses are the ultimate oracles, the way they use their bodies really as an oracle, and just their perfect attunement
Mm-hmm.
to the truth of any situation and the heart of any situation. And I discovered, though, when you reached out, I realized that there's this whole new way of doing things, and there's potentially like a more radical way of working with horses, which you've started
Mm-hmm.
to implement. And could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So I think that because this is still a fairly new practice in general out there, and as you know, like so many people have never heard of it to begin with. So when I first came to it years ago, it felt, even as it was, radical and progressive to me. And the work is based on, I'll just give a little like quick rundown of what the work, how the work came to be, I guess, just in case
Please, yeah.
someone listening doesn't know. So um, the work came as sort of like a divide off of the fact that lots of practitioners had realized that there were physical therapeutic benefits to people being with horses and being on horses. But during the therapeutic riding sort of wave, there were people who all sort of started sharing with each other similar experiences where they were like, we can't deny that something else is going on here on a more emotional level. And I think it was just enough people were seeing that result as well, that they were like, maybe there's something else here that we're not really tapping into yet. So a few of those sort of thought leaders broke away and started developing ways to do more like groundwork with horses, where the main goal wasn't physical, it was emotional wellness at the heart. So that sort of started this new wave of, as you said, equine therapy. And the reason that I don't personally call it equine therapy, or I don't call myself an equine therapist, is because I'm not a psychotherapist. So there can be a little bit of there's a different thing going on there. Some people are psychotherapists who then use this work in conjunction with doing psychotherapy. So that's not what I do. But it all kind of fits into the same container. And the reason this works is because horses evolved as prey animals. So even though they're these really big, powerful animals, we see them that way, they are still hunted in the wild. So they're prey animals. And for a prey animal to really survive all of these years, they have to evolve to be extremely aware and sensitive of energies around them, and of subtle body language, and we'll get into that more later, but like emotional congruency. So those are the things that make a horse like a reflection of us, or I call them like human lie detectors, because they are their innate ability is to pick up on all of these subtle things that are going on internally with another being, and then the way they respond acts as a mirror to that. So because humans aren't used to having a mirror held up to them with all of their internal stuff going on, it's sort of this really profound experience, right? To have that reflected back at you, moment to moment feedback, biofeedback. So I would say that the way I was trained was definitely within a structure of having actual activities that you do with people. And I would say it's also because it's hard to certify somebody in something without giving them like a lot of structure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just part of like the teaching process, as you feel obligated to sort of share these really specific tools. So a lot of activities have been like passed down from teacher to teacher and like morphed a little bit, but they seem to all be fairly similar, of taking a horse, leading a horse, maybe into a round pen or some sort of fenced in area, and having exercises where you're interacting with the horse both on the lead and off the lead, but still in a fairly tight space so that the horse feels it's necessary to sort of be there with you and to interact with you. So I don't necessarily want to talk down on that, just because I still see it as being like a work in progress, and people coming to this type of work in general are already like sort of breaking some barriers here. So I think that's really cool and really progressive and really powerful. I mean, for me, even within that parameter of doing work with the horses in a round pen, I still felt I had huge awakenings even within that model. But like you alluded to, after I did some of the work myself and became a coach myself, I did start feeling like it wasn't really resonating with my relationship to my horses.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you're building a relationship with someone, you have to be trustworthy. And it started feeling like I was this person to them all of the time, except for when I had a client. And then suddenly I wasn't giving them the choice anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that would be very confusing and inauthentic for a horse to experience that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were saying about, you know, you have a relationship with your horse that's profound, and then suddenly you're bringing in people for your horses to heal.
Yes.
So it's a big responsibility for them, you know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden. Yeah.
And I like to think that I ask their permission, that I was asking their permission to some extent, because I was taught to do that. But at the end of the day, you know, we could have a whole conversation around if it's ethical to even own animals. But I think, you know, given the circumstances that these are domesticated animals that are in the care of me, and they are not truly free to leave, it's I think that there's a fine line to walk there with not wanting to use them as a tool. And for me, like within the horse world of riding and showing and all the things, like we see horses as a tool for a goal. Like they are being used. They're not necessarily being respected. So for me, that was the main shift, was just like, how do I, you know, in my terms, ethically do the work so that the horses can share their beautiful wisdom with humans, but also in a way that feels authentic for them and is mutually beneficial for them. Because I do think that the mutual healing only can happen within the authentic realm, if that makes sense. So
that's beautiful. Yeah. And so you created a space for animals and humans to connect in nature, right? Where the
right.
have their own space and time to do
Yeah,
things.
so I just basically eliminated the halter, and I eliminated the round pen. So I just made it like, here's this big open space where the horses essentially live. Here they are just in their natural state. And you can enter that space, absolutely. And you can request that they engage. But that's about it, you know? Like the rest is up to them. So I always say, the golden rule here is, you know, if you approach a horse, the horse gets to set their boundary. And if a horse approaches you, you get to set your boundary. And that's about it. Like, we work off of that. As long as those two things are happening, then it's mutually respectful.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the situations I've been in with horses have just been, you know, so on point. I mean, I've realized that you really can't lead a horse unless you're really in your power. If they feel you faltered for 1 second, they're not going to come with you. And likewise, you know, I had a period of time where I was really brokenhearted, and until I could really give love to myself and really stand in my love, the horse, Lucy was her name, you know, she wouldn't come to kind of be with me. But then as soon as I was really acknowledged my own self-esteem and my own self-love, she came and, you know, put her, like, nuzzled me and put her nose to my chest. So it's really,
I think that points to so many things, you know, that opens a lot of different topics. Like for me, one would be that it feels good to her, right? When you feel good. Like, just to really simplify it. And I think that that's because you feeling good is like, you feeling good is just a reflection of the fact that there's resonance and alignment going on within you, right? So you can get really deep into that. And I also think for people who are interested in just herd behavior, because that's what a lot of this is built off of, we have to think about the leader, right? Like, there's always a lead horse in a herd. And the lead horse is different than the dominant horses. So if you look at dominant horses in a herd, their sort of role is to keep the herd together, right? They make everyone go, you know, like, you're going to stay here, you're not going to leave and go over here. It's almost like a protector, right? And so one of my horses is very dominant, and he pushes my other horse around, tells him, no, we're going to the water trough now, you know, but when it comes time for when danger arises, right? My other horse, he's the sentinel, he's the lead, he is who's followed. So the lead horse has to be loved. The lead horse has to be loved. They have to be nothing but respectful in order to be followed. So that's different than domination. And I think so, kind of what you were saying, right? Like, when you ask a horse to follow you somewhere, you're saying, you can trust me, I'm the leader here. And a horse has to believe that for it to feel safe. And until you are in that heart space, like you said, that doesn't seem trustworthy.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really such an incredible mirror, just as you were saying. Yeah. And can we talk a little bit about this incredible feminine nature of the horses, and how it really teaches us about our own feminine intuition and the receptivity of the female?
Yes, absolutely. So horses are very much the yin. They are the being, the receiving, the intuitive. I actually named my first horse, Kamali, which means spirit guide, because I felt like he just walked this fine line of like grounded earth and spiritual realm and brought them together. And I sort of see that as the feminine as well. And you know, because of all of the reasons, you know, giving birth, having life force come into you and emerge from you. I mean, I don't even truly understand how that happens, but it's incredible.
Yeah, the way we're channeling through our bodies, you know. Yeah,
exactly. It's a channeling. And so there's a lot to say there. I think for me, it would just start with my personal journey, to really like understanding that the horse represented the feminine, was just the changes that I had to make, and the things I had to wake up to within myself before I was able to cross that barrier with them and really have a deep connection with them, because I was coming from the masculine, and I don't think I had realized that, but that was just societal training for me, right? Like I was always fighting against my feminine self, and it was always about, you know, proving myself and doing things, and doing being basically the premise for my value. And the being and the intuitive part of myself was sort of just suppressed because it didn't seem like the most important part, or at least the most valued part. So when I started learning to be with my horses, I would come up against all these barriers because I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to them. I wasn't listening to myself, and I didn't really know how. So I think that was the beginning of my sort of, you know, my journey, my heroine's journey, I guess, of realizing how cut off I was from that part of myself. And the more I just learned to, you know, it sounds simple, but it's not, but the more I just learned to be still, be quiet, and receive guidance, you know, it started shifting everything. My relationship with them completely changed and opened up. And so all of the things, you know, they were a model for that for me. Just being able to witness such an intuitive, embodied being and see them in their power, and see how, you know, there's no part of them questioning that or suppressing that. That's
exactly.
just natural.
Yeah. And we talked about that the other day as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
How incredible it would be if we took all this energy, even those of us who are really open and have our intuition turned on or our vision turned on, but how it would be to really bring that into our bodies, and just know the truth of every moment, what the next right thing is, and the next right thing is.
Yes.
So incredibly present with
and
ourselves.
there's no questioning, right? It's the ultimate listening, and it's your inner wisdom. And I think that I mentioned this to you the other day as well. Like in the beginning, I would, like in school, go into the round pen and just stand next to a horse and start crying because I just felt all of that in myself being shunned, and it like hurt me because I was just like, wow, I'm not embracing this really, really like important part of my life and myself. And so it was just really powerful to be around that. And that was, I guess, the beginning of me seeing that was something also within me, not just within them.
Right.
And it's only gotten more and more the more time I've spent with them, and the more time I've spent trying to, you know, hone my own intuitive ability. It's so funny how often I have a question and I just immediately go to all of the other people and all the other places for the answer. And even though I feel an answer, I don't trust it.
Yeah.
And then I search and search and search, and then it's always like at the end of the day, it's always like the only answer is to listen to myself. And
yeah. But we've been taught to override that so much.
Right.
I mean, I think as children, we all know how to do that. It's so obvious and clear, and we're really in tune. And we're just taught to compromise and override. It's a sort of survival thing, ironically, but in some ways we're numbing ourselves out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing. It's not actually funny. I just find it sort of funny in more of an ironic way that our ultimate wisdom would be something that we would be taught to override. Like, that just seems so against our own well-being. And
could you tell us something about emotional congruency?
Yes. Yeah, so I love the term, this sort of concept, because I think it says a lot about being intuitive. But so emotional congruency just means ultimately that what's happening internally, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing internally is also being matched by your behavior on the outside, right? So the two are aligned. And that would be a horse. Like, they're always emotionally congruent. Their actions and the energy that they put out is always directly in line with what's going on internally. So you know exactly what they're saying at all times. Whereas humans, because of the reasons you just mentioned, right? Like, there's society, there's rules, there are things that are considered acceptable, unacceptable, comfortable, uncomfortable. So because of all of this, naturally we're raised and taught to be emotionally incongruent, which just means how we are looking and behaving on the outside is not necessarily a reflection of what's happening internally. So I would say probably 99% of the time we're being emotionally incongruent, and not only because of the things I just mentioned, like society. I do think that's the root of it, but I would say also, like, we're not in touch with ourselves anymore. So a lot of times we don't know we're being emotionally incongruent. It's just happening as it's just our natural state almost now. I don't want to say natural, that's the wrong word, but it is the normal state. Maybe that's the right word. So for a horse, they're really great examples of this, because, like, remember when I mentioned before about how they're like human lie detectors? Well, the reason is horses evolved to stay alive by being able to really accurately read emotional congruency. So a line at the watering hole just drinking is not a threat to the herd, and the herd would not necessarily run away, right? But a line at the watering hole who is behaving emotionally incongruent and is trying to act cool but has the intention of hunting is obviously a threat to your life, and you need to be able to sense just that tiny little shift in energy in order to stay alive. So I remember I told you this the other day too, like, our state of emotional incongruency can be a bit alarming to other animals for this reason. And
you must think we're crazy. Like, imagine if we could, like if we could really feel everything that people are really feeling beneath the surface. I mean, it is a lot to hold, and horses just naturally know how to hold that. But for us humans, it's something we have to grow in capacity, like our feeling sense.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly it. Is that how can you even become emotionally congruent if you're not growing your feeling capacity or your intuition capacity? Because otherwise you don't really know what's going on internally.
Right.
right? So
Yeah,
that has to be the first element. It has to start with feeling and noticing, and then that feeling and noticing will sort of inform you how to.
absolutely. Exactly. I mean, there's so many similarities in the way both of us work and teach, because I think that's the foundation as well, is just coming back into your body and just growing in your feeling sense, and being
Mhm.
able to, that's the feminine, reading the field, reading
Yes,
what's in front of you, behind you, like, and what energies are coming in and out of your system. And to me, it's always a question of really starting with your body.
absolutely. And because like you said, it's the vessel, right? Your body is the vessel. And um that reminded me of a few things. Like, one thing is that I often find in doing this work, and I wonder if this comes up for you at all, that when you're studying intuition, essentially, um, I like to teach emotions as information from your environment, right? So the way that a horse experiences an emotion is just embodied. It's not thinking about it. So, like, the best example is fear, because it's really obvious. When a horse gets scared, let's say like my horse notices something like moving in the bushes and he doesn't know what it is. So his body feels fear, and that's a signal to him that he needs to investigate what the risk is and potentially get to safety. So you see his whole body, it gets tense, his tail goes up, his ears are like perked forward, like everything tightens. You can see that nervous system response of like, do we need to run? Like, what's going on here? And that's the same thing that happens in our body, right? Like, when we feel fear, we might not be as um, even aware of it anymore, but a lot of times we do have like those stress hormones and all of that adrenaline happening. And then let's say like he walks a little bit closer and he realizes like it's my cat in the bush, which is, most likely going to be the case here. So he just immediately releases the emotion out of his body to relax. So you see oftentimes it'll be like a sigh, or he'll do like a shake, or even sometimes like a big yawn. And if he really needs to move energy out, sometimes he'll like roll on the ground. Whatever needs to happen to flush that out, the energy out, and then the emotion has served its purpose and now it's released, and he just goes back to like calm state of grazing. And it's that easy. It's literally, here's an emotion, it's here to serve a message. A message has been like transmitted. I assessed the situation, and now I realize that I'm not in danger and I can release that fear. And so when we're looking at that in our own lives, I like to talk about how, we have all these like categories for like, this is a good emotion, this is a bad emotion, this is one I don't want to feel, this is one I want to feel all the time and I won't let go, and like there's all these things that we do that are really fighting against our intuition, just trying to speak and
So
guide.
beautiful. That's so beautiful. And yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's a skill to learn how to feel emotions and just let them run through you. Just
Yeah.
feel it and just run it through your system. And
Yeah. And I guess like one of the reasons I bring that up is because I know a lot of people have a hard time deciphering like, what is true intuition? Like, what can I trust that's coming through me? And then like, what is something that I'm feeling just based on what I was thinking about? And to me, that's a really important distinction, because you're going to feel, if you're a human, you might be feeling fear all the time. And that's not necessarily your intuitive self really like speaking to you. That might just be because all you're doing is spinning around a scary story in your head, and your body's having a physiological response to that. So I think that's another really beautiful aspect about the horse work, is being able to feel the difference when you're embodied, when you're getting an intuitive feeling, when your emotion is there to serve a real purpose. And then, or when you're holding on to an emotion in your body because you're actually not listening to your intuition, and you're actually not embodied, and you're not in that feminine sort of receiving space. And instead you're just cycling thoughts in your head.
Right, exactly. And all of this work feels very somatic to me in so many ways. But it also feels very shamanic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I know that you do a little bit of shamanic work, or you have that similar point of view. Do you want to share a little bit about how this feels like shamanic work to you?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the beginning of it was just that my teachers were shamans, the ones that I went to get certified. And actually the reason there are quite a few schools out there these days who do certify, and I had a really hard time finding one that felt resonant for me. And so I actually ended up going to a school in Canada, which was a little bit out of the way, but it was just the one that felt most authentic. Like, I remember I didn't even know they were shamans at the time, but I remember reading their website and just that spiritual sort of undertone, not just the whole, a horse is a prey animal, and so this is going to happen. It was very much like, no, there's so much going on here. And it just sounded so tapped into the truth. And I was like, these are the people I want to learn from. So I just went to them, not really knowing that they were shamans, or not really knowing much about that element to things, but already sort of coming from a space in myself that felt like God is nature. And so that was already there for me. And when I got there was just, like, you just step onto their property and you feel the work that's been done there. I mean, they have actually done ceremonies and there are crystals buried in the ground. There's crystals under all the horses' stalls. Like, everything has been really touched there. So I think whether or not you're, no matter what your belief is, I think a lot of people just go there and feel something is really being, like, what is the word? There's just such a reverence for life there. And I think that was, I told you that was eye-opening for me to see land and animals respected in this way. And not just respected, but looked to for guidance. And so I had a very incredible spiritual awakening in school, because I was going through shamanic ceremonies with the horses, and I was, I did a sweat lodge. I did all these things that were very new for me, like a lot of journeying. And actually during one of our journeying sessions, I saw my horse, who I had yet to get. Wow. He came to me, and it was, so I had a lot of very eye-opening experiences.
And that reminds me also of what you're saying about connecting to this wider network of horse energy and of ancestry, horse ancestry.
Yes.
It's amazing to me.
Oh, yes. So they always asked the horse ancestors for guidance, and also we would call in the horse ancestors for support. And I first met the horse ancestors in my own journey experience at school. And for me, it was so really amazing. My horse now, Kamali, he was just a dream horse to me at this point, but it was him. And he sort of met me in this field and guided me to some sand dunes. And when we went like through the grasses, there was just like this huge herd of horses. They almost like took up this whole beach. And they came forward to us, and one of the horses had in his mouth like a piece of mane, like hair, horse hair. It was like tied in this little thing. And he handed it to me, and I didn't really know what it was. I was just like, I felt it was a gift. And I took that with me, in the journey. And then, then all these things started happening. Kamali came to me in real life. And so now I kind of know where to visit them. But
yeah, like doing dream work with horses too. What an
right, exactly. So when I need to sort of go call on them, like I journey back to that spot because that's where I met them, and then ask them to come join me like here where I am. And I also have a guide. One of the living horses at school in Canada, when I was learning this work, was my guide for communicating with my horse over here, Kamali. So I would ask him to share with Kamali like what this work is all about, and like ask, give him guidance as well. And just to communicate when I was at school with my horse back home.
That's
and
incredible.
yeah. His name was Contendor, and he was like this really, really majestic sort of like emperor horse. And I remember it was really crazy because when we first met the herd of horses at school, we do this exercise called Meet the Herd, and you're not given any information about the horses, but you're supposed to just go see if you can intuit anything from them, and you just write down anything that pops into your head, like any word, any phrase, any name. And then after you meet all the horses and do that, then the teachers would reveal information about each horse to see how much you had picked up on just by being with them. And so now I sometimes do that exercise with my horses and other people because it's such a powerful thing to show somebody how much they are tapped into their intuition. Wow. And it's always these really weird, abstract things, right? And I remember with Contendor, I wrote emperor. I was like, emperor, like something, And when they were revealing information about Contendor, I didn't even know his name at the time. Like they didn't tell you the names or anything. They said the word like emperor, like they said the word, they like the whole thing, the whole description of him. I was like, oh my gosh, so it was really cool and
amazing. Yeah, because it's just a reminder also of their medicine that they have, that each one of them has their own medicine.
Oh yeah,
horse medicine.
Just like us, everyone is different.
Just like us, exactly. We have our own flavor of life force and our gifts and the qualities that we carry. Yeah.
Yes, and he just had. I remember one of his teachings was always, you really had to stand in your power to get near him, and we would do this like grooming activity in the mornings where we would go into the barn and greet all the horses and just have like a grooming session with each horse, which I say grooming lightly. We weren't going in there to clean the horses. It was just a moment to connect body to body. And with Contendor, he would not let you touch him unless you were in your power. He would in his ears, like, you can stand here, but you do not brush me. You do not touch me unless you are like fully here with me. And so I would always be very nervous going into his stall. I'm like, am I going to be able to do it this day? But I needed him. I needed that. And so he ended up being my guide horse there at school, because I just knew, I was like, I need Constantine. I need a
the right medicine for you. Yeah,
yes,
that's
definitely.
so beautiful. That's
So
beautiful.
yeah, I think that it's similar to every species has a consciousness, and past and present and future collide. And I think that for me, being able to connect on a spiritual level and know that I have that support, and know that my horses can communicate with me telepathically and all of the things, that was a huge launching point for Soul Equine, because I don't think I would have wanted to do it if it didn't feel that magical and powerful as it does. And
it's wonderful.
yeah, and we definitely, I just want to say that we definitely also, it was also obviously all about horses, but it's not just about horses, it's about all animals. It's about nature. And my spirit guide, my animal guide, is actually a raven, not a horse. My husband's is a horse. And so for me, I took Soul Equine more in that direction, because I realized, I think so many people are attracted to horses because they are such powerful teachers and they have such powerful medicine. And I've always been like that since I was a little girl. But what they've taught me the most is that all of nature and all of animals have something to teach me, and that I am like an intricate part of this web, just as they are, and that we're not really different. And I think like that's even more important.
That's incredible that we have within us the same life force that nature has, and it runs through us too. That's beautiful. And you're bringing that into different aspects of your work. So you have Soul Equine, where people can potentially come and work with you and the horses.
Mm-hmm.
You're also taking all of this knowledge online, and you have a program out at the moment. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just a personal journey, I think, of really at first wanting to be here in the flesh, doing the work with people one-on-one, and seeing those results, and just being able to witness and hold a container for people to have their own awakenings. But the more I moved the work a little bit more into like the freedom-based work that I was doing, I started leaning towards more workshop experiences where people would sort of all come together and become part of the herd, and also have other like nature-based experiences and holistic teachers involved. And that sort of morphed into me hearing from a lot of people who wanted to attend and couldn't, or wanted to know if I was doing anything online, or, like how could they be a part? And I was like, okay, I thought about almost even more than the people who are already living really close to these like really wild, beautiful places. There's so many people who don't have access to that. And I used to be one of them. I lived in New York City for 6 years. Before that, I grew up in the suburbs. I mean, I was in no way having experiences like this. And I just think that the horses told me that they wanted me to spread their wisdom in this other way. And I'm like, sure, it's always going to be a very powerful, incredible experience to come have a live interaction, but everything that the horses and nature teach us is applicable all the time, everywhere, and really intended to be utilized daily. So for me, the program is a way to introduce people to the same teachings and tools that I've gotten from nature, and how to apply them to their life, no matter where they are, no matter where they're living. Because for me, you need like a launching off place without that guidance, without the tools, it's hard to know how to take this knowledge and actually live it. And so the program is called Finding Wild Peace, and it's a 6-week online journey, and I sort of like live guide you through it. But yeah. So
fantastic. This is what is so needed, and it's such a, it just sounds wonderful. Sounds like something I would dive into with my whole body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll leave all the details for your course underneath the video, and so people know how to contact
thank you. Awesome.
So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm so happy to connect with you, and honestly, just to know that you're out there doing your work is comforting.
we're all doing our bit, with our own medicine.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Audrey. Well, lovely to meet you and to speak with you, and I'm sure we'll meet soon. I'll come out to Oregon to see you.
Please do.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.